You're listening to the Journey podcast. What does it mean to be unmessable with, and how can it help us navigate life's ups and downs? Discover how to embody the art of being unmessable with in today's episode. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. The art of being unmessable with is a concept coined by our guest, which refers to the ability to stay centered and resilient in the face of challenges and difficult situations. Being unmessable with means having the strength and clarity to remain true to oneself and one's values, regardless of external circumstances. In this episode, we explore the art of being unmessable with and its practical applications in everyday life. Our guest shares her insights and experiences with cultivating resilience and inner strength, providing tips and strategies for building a strong and unshakable foundation for navigating life's challenges. Josselyne Herman Saccio has been leading transformative programs and coaching people for more than 30 years. She has worked with and impacted over 200,000 people directly in the areas of business and career, relationships and family, communication and self-expression, fulfilling vision, resolving conflict, and overall well-being. Since 2008, as the founder of the nonprofit organization United Global Shift, Josselyne has worked with leaders from more than 20 countries. For the past 3.5 decades, she has had the opportunity to coach and collaborate with a diverse group of people, including executives, celebrities, stay-at-home mothers, victims of trauma, those in professional transition, community activists, pop stars, composers, neuroscientists, philosophers, athletes, Broadway, TV and film personalities, thought leaders, and CEOs. In her work with both individuals and organizations, she has had the honor of guiding many people through the empowering process of becoming unmessable with. The work she does with people integrates creativity, vision, integrity, action, and results, along with revealing unconscious blocks that create messable with moments. Working with Josselyne and her methodology allows people to create sustainable, positive behavioral change, true transformation, enables people to ongoingly create the life of their dreams and actually live it now. Josselyne is the author of several books, including Peace Promises, 30 Days to a More Peaceful Life, The Promise Effect, How to Create a Life That Wasn't Going to Happen Anyway, and So You Want to Be a New York Actor, The New York Actor's Guide to the Career of Their Dreams While Paying the Rent. Let's meet the incredible Josselyne Herman Saccio. Hi, Josselyne. It's so great to have you on the podcast. I am so excited to chat with you, and we are talking about the art of being unmessable with today. Wow. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, and we're talking about my favorite subject, so there you go.
Yeah, it sounds like such an interesting topic. I'm curious to find out more. So, for starters, do you want to share a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Sure. Well, I've been coaching people for more than 30 years and in the transformation world. So I'm somebody who has led transformative programs and designed transformative programs and done one-on-one coaching and group coaching for a really, really long time. And I began my transformative journey when I was 11 years old, believe it or not. My parents had done a seminar and they were going to get divorced. And they did this seminar and they got back together. And they just celebrated like 65 years together. So it was obviously a very powerful seminar that they did.
Yeah.
So I did it. And what I started to toy around with and develop was this muscle that I call of being unmessable with. Now, what does that even mean? It doesn't mean being tough, and it doesn't mean being numb to your emotions. And it doesn't mean kind of eliminating circumstances or people from your life so you don't have to deal with them. It's more about being able to be centered and free and self expressed no matter what circumstances are coming your way, because life throws stuff at us, doesn't it? No matter how great things can be one day, the next day things can happen. So, how do you be true to who you really are in the face of any circumstance that life throws at you? So, that's what I mean by being unmessable with. And, when I was in my early 20s, I had discovered that I was pretty messable with in my desire to be a singer. That was my dream my whole life. And I thought you couldn't do it as your career. And I didn't want to be a starving artist. But then once again, I was in this transformative setting and I saw that that was a limiting belief. It wasn't the truth. And within 3 weeks, I had a record deal.
Wow.
Yeah, right. Wow. Ended up having a number one record. So that dream came true. And that's when I became really committed to having other people have their dreams come true and disappear whatever was messing with them in being able to fulfill the life of their dreams. So that began my journey.
Wow. And at such a young age, too, at 11. That's so incredible that you started so young. I'm glad that you started finding your path that young and then went on to explore that.
Me too.
Yeah. And in this journey of your own transformation, what have you found is sort of the biggest thing that ends up messing with people? Have you found any patterns as you were going along?
Yeah, it's funny. I was making a list because I'm designing this course right now, and I was thinking, oh, I should put like the top 10 things that mess with people. But honestly, there are so many things that mess with people. But, there's definitely things like if you don't get enough sleep from a well being perspective, that will mess with you. It is impossible to be unmessable with if your body isn't working at least at a basic level. And a lack of sleep is one of the biggest things that throws people. But I think mostly it has to do with, I could say money messes with people. I could say relationships, communication, all those things that are pretty obvious. But what it kind of boils down to, Petra, is people's ability to have muscle with their word to themselves, not just to other people. Because most people, like if you promised to meet me at 10 o'clock in the morning for coffee, it's likely you would show up. But if you said to yourself, oh, I'm going to go to the gym in the morning, it's less likely than if you give your word to someone else. And that is a big aspect of what has people end up not fulfilling on what they really want is their word is weak.
That's a very interesting thing that you mentioned there. So, as you're putting that out there, I'm getting a sense that it's not so much the word that maybe we give to other people, but the word that we give to ourselves as well on when we commit to
Yeah.
making changes that help us.
Yeah, and it's so funny because it doesn't exist for most people like their word. They just say stuff. But, if you think about it, your vision, your dreams exist only in word. You say, oh, I want to be a singer, or I want to have a podcast, whatever it is. I want to make a difference in this area. That only exists in language, in word. And if you have a vision in word, but you can't keep your word to yourself about, I don't know, cleaning your closet or taking the garbage out or whatever those kind of seemingly mundane things are, your word is weak and it won't have the kind of power it needs to fulfill on those visions,
Mhm.
because the garbage and the vision, they seem very different, but ultimately they're both existing in your word.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And what can people do to start working on their word, on that commitment that they're making? What can they do to start working on that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. When I work with people one on one, it depends on the person. So I give them different things to do. But what I found is that many people have like a not empowering relationship to their calendar. Okay. So their calendar exists for them like a bunch of stuff to do, and it's overwhelming. And it's just like, oh, I don't even want to do that. And you can't tell me what to do, even though you're the one who put the stuff in the calendar in the first place. You're like resisting your own domination. So it's like, a childish relationship to their calendar. So I created for my private clients this workshop, which I now have available, by the way, for other people because it made such a difference. I was like, oh, I should just give this to people to work on using their calendar as practice to develop their word, because everything in your calendar you are putting in there. I mean, unless you have somebody else putting things in your calendar, but you're saying they can. So by proxy, you're putting it in there. And, starting to map out, create your day, but not just the to dos, Petra, because then it's just a bunch of to dos. See, the context is decisive. And if the context for what you're doing is getting stuff done, you're going to be in a mode of reaction and, quite honestly, being messable with, because you're just dealing with what life is throwing at you. So I have people create a context for everything they're doing. So they're not only creating the to do, they're creating the to be in that moment. So, for instance, if they put going to the gym in their calendar, they create why. Like, why are you going to the gym? What are you creating by going to the gym? Maybe it's creating vitality or creating stability or creating energy. Whatever it would be, they'd put that before going to the gym. So the context precedes the content. Tell me if that makes sense or if you have any
Yeah,
questions.
that makes sense. So you are connecting a purpose to the vision that you're getting people to look at before they commit to that. I like that idea because
Yeah.
that really brings a why to why people want to do something, like a reason for them to do it. I love
Yeah, and
that.
they're the creator of it. So you get to be the creator not only of the content in your life, but the context in which it's held, which is very powerful. So I give people that exercise to begin to exercise their word and practice having everything in their calendar. I mean, I have when I shower in my calendar, I have when I'm paying bills for 15 minutes. I mean, my calendar is my life. I've created it. And if it isn't in my calendar, the chances of it getting done are much less likely
Yeah.
than if it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for yourself and your clients, once you begin on this journey of working on your word and your calendar, what kind of changes do you see? Maybe even mental or emotional changes. What do you see in your life or their lives that starts happening when you do that?
Well, the funniest thing is, this is just something I do naturally. So it just kind of, I was like, oh, you should do this, right? But people are reporting to me that things that they have been procrastinating about or resisting, they're just doing naturally with joy. I have one person who had been resisting writing a book for years. I mean, she had been talking about writing a book for so long. It was like everybody was sick of hearing her talk about writing this book already. And she started this coaching program with me, and I gave her this calendar exercise. And literally, she's like almost done with the book. It's unbelievable. She's writing every day, just naturally. So that's remarkable. And then I have these other two clients that both reported to me last week, which I just thought was so exciting and I just could die happy, that they've never been happier and more at peace. They have no overwhelm. When they first started working with me, it was all about, oh my God, I can't do it all. It's just so much. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a business owner, how do I balance it all? They are so at peace and fulfilled. It's remarkable. So that's the kind of stuff that happens when you start being the creator of your life. And I know it sounds silly. It's like it's just a calendar, but I promise you, it is an access to a whole world of creation, which is really the point. It's not about a calendar. It's about you being someone who's creating life versus reacting to life.
Yeah, I love that. And I do have sort of a question out of left field for you for that.
I'm ready.
I'm wondering, do you work with people who have neurodivergent traits as well? Because I know sometimes there's a bit of a struggle of feeling overwhelmed and organizing the day. So is that something that you work with as well?
I definitely do. And obviously, that's what I said when I'm working with people one on one. It's just customized to whatever they need. And I have people that I work with that are working on very, very big projects, very successful people. But then I also have people that are working on just keeping their word about sleeping and going to work. So it's a whole range of human beings because there's not a human being I've ever met that doesn't get messed with. And that's from CEOs to religiously. I mean, people just are messable with because you're a human being and your brain is designed to survive. So that whole world of survival and reaction is what I call the messable with world. And then my job, what I've taken on as my game in life, is to give people access to moving out of the world of reaction and into the world of creation on a moment to moment basis. Because you're always going to have things that mess with you, they don't go away, but you can transcend them and transfer yourself to a different path.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that.
Me too. It's so cool.
I
It's
know, it
like,
just sounds so fascinating. And the joy that comes when people actually feel like they're succeeding, they're keeping their words, and that joy that comes into their lives. I find that really amazing.
yeah, because people don't realize, but when you say whatever it is, I'm going to take the garbage out at 7, right? And you do it, and you do that enough times, your muscle of your word is building. So then you could say things like, I'm going to triple my business in the next 2 months, or I'm going to create intimacy in my marriage. And it can happen because your word has power. It becomes like, not to get too woo woo, but it becomes like law in the universe. When your word is strong enough, you say something and it happens. That's the way life works.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't think it's woo woo. I think that it's very natural that wherever we focus, our energy actually flows to that, right? So that makes sense that when you're starting to focus on certain things and you're directing your energy into that focus, that things are going to change. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and it's not just focus. So I don't mean to leave out the most important thing. It's actions. Those are the actions that are in your calendar that if you don't take action on what you're committed to, no matter what it is, whether it's intimacy in your marriage or it's tripling your business, there are actions that will produce that result. No result gets produced without taking action. And that's why the whole word thing is so critical because most people either they have no idea what the actions are, so they get stopped because they're messable with by overthinking, or they know what the actions are and they haven't put them in their calendar in a way that they do them. It just keeps getting kicked down the road.
Yeah. And outside of sleeping properly, and I would imagine eating a healthy diet and exercising, are there any other things that people could prepare themselves with for this calendar exercise that you start with to sort of create like a good basis to start from?
Really, you could create a morning routine for yourself. I find that very useful. And the people that I work with have all really told me that that makes a big difference. That if they have a morning physical routine, because it stimulates your brain in the morning and you're able to do more complex thinking. The other thing is a midday physical activity to schedule that is, I find, very useful for people because most of the people that I've worked with are busy people, right? So they end up kind of petering out towards the end of the day, 3 or 4. They get a little like, can't even think straight anymore. I've been doing so much today. So I always have them schedule something around 12 or 1 where they're going to do 20 minutes of physical activity, whether it's walking or dancing, or you don't have to leave your house if the weather's bad. You can run in place, do jumping jacks. I don't care what it is. But it's been proven by neuroscientists much smarter than me that if you do that, it stimulates your brain in a way that you're able to do more complex thinking in the second part of the day and you're not as drained. So, scheduling the morning routine, a midday physical, like get away from your desk and do something. And then at some point during the day, I always recommend, and I do it myself, and it makes a huge difference, is scheduling what I call recharge time. Even if it's a half an hour, 20 minutes, that you're not going and doing and making something happen. You're just recharging, whether you're watching the news or you're having a cup of coffee or you're just sitting and meditate, whatever it is, 20 to 30 minutes of recharge time every day.
That also makes a lot of sense. I know that around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I usually get the nap time feeling. So,
Exactly. When we're babies, exactly. It's kind of like, and we don't really do that as human beings. My mother, who's 92, she takes naps all day long. I wish I were her. It's like, it's so great. But you need to recharge and you also need to be active. And they've tested this with students that take a test. And right before the test, they do 20 to 30 minutes of exercise. And those kids always do better on the test, like exponentially better on the test than the people that had not done that kind of physical activity. It literally opens up the neuronal pathways of your brain. It stretches your brain.
mhm.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, and it would be so important in today's time where a lot of people just sit in front of the computer all day.
Oh my God, it's crazy. It's crazy how much I'm on Zoom, and I try and schedule some calls where I'm just on the phone so I can actually walk and, like be in the sun, to have a call. But that's my job, is to be on the phone with people and coach them. So I don't want to not do it. So you've got to design it. Again, back to you being the creator. You have to design it in a way that works.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously when you have clients who are very busy, women who might be juggling family, career, other responsibilities, do you help them get a sense of how they could lay that out so they can make that work for their family as well?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, one of my mantras is it's completely possible to have it all. I have it all. I mean, I have 3 kids, married almost 30 years. I am the founder of a nonprofit. I have an entertainment management company where I manage the careers of 110 actors. I've trained over 200,000 people in transformation. I have this coaching business. I run courses. I take care of my elderly parents. I mean, I'm active in the community. So I have it all. But the key is while it's completely accessible to have it all, it is not possible to do it all.
Mhm.
And most people confuse those two things.
Yeah.
So, one thing I work on with people, and it's not just women, it's men too. I mean, more of my clients are women, but I have male clients that are struggling with that very thing. Like, how do they be a good husband, or how do they, maintain their well being as well as their business and all of that? But the key is being two things. One is context, like I said before, because if you have everything as separate, it occurs like too much to handle. And that's when overwhelm starts to set in. It's like, oh, I have so much going on. Like that's the conversation that people end up getting stuck in. For me, everything I'm doing is inside one context, which is supporting people in fulfilling their dreams and developing their ability to be unmessable with. Everything I do, from my nonprofit to my parenting to my taking care of my parents to my marriage, there's nothing that doesn't exist inside of that holder. So I'm never overwhelmed. I literally have not been overwhelmed in 30 years, which
Wow.
is freaky given how much I
Yeah.
have going on, right? So the first key is context, and that's one of the first things I work on with people is creating a context that they can go to instead of that world of reaction and getting stuff done. That's one thing. And then the second thing is making requests. Most people are horrible at making requests. They just do everything themselves, and it's easier to just get it done myself. I have one woman that I'm working with who has 5 kids. 5 kids, and they're all pretty decent. They're teenage, most of them, except for one of them. And she's dealing with the overwhelm of cleaning the house. I go, what are you talking about? Get your kids cleaning the house. You need to make some requests. If you're not making 5 bold requests a day, there's no way you're going to fulfill your visions in life. And people have a real hard time making requests because they're afraid of what they call rejection or being a burden or whatever their conversation is that messes with them about making requests. So I work with them on dismantling what's in the way of them making requests because number one, it's the same muscle as will you invest in my company? Will you be my client? Will you make dinner tonight? It's all the same muscle. So I work with them on that. So those two things are the keys to having it all, but not doing it all. You can't do it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting that you mentioned that that is the same muscle because I've never thought of it that way. But now that you say that, it makes perfect sense. So,
Isn't that amazing? Making requests is one of the best muscles. If you're listeners, if you're listening out there and you want to start fulfilling on what you really want in life, start making requests. I was somebody who could not make a request to save my life when I was younger. I was afraid it would make me look needy. I mean, I wouldn't even let people, when I was dating, I wouldn't let them pay for the meal because I didn't want to owe anybody. I mean, it was like absurd. I'm not even making, they're offering to take me to dinner. And I'm like, no, 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 I'll split it with you. It was a whole thing I had going on about being independent and not needing people. I didn't need anybody. Since I was like 5, I would told my parents we were flying to Florida for Christmas one year. And I told the stewardess, I don't want to sit with them. I want to sit by myself. Like I was the most independent 5-year-old you ever saw. But then I realized how much that kept me disconnected from people and kept a lid on what I could accomplish. So I transformed that. And one of the biggest people that I was afraid to make requests of was my father. Like asking him for $5 to me was like torture. I couldn't do it. I mean, I worked from the time I was like 5 years old. I was selling shells and lemonade just so I didn't have to ask for money from my dad, right? So I had this transformation where I just said, I'm just going to make a bold request. And I was raising money for a charity and I was having trouble doing it because I couldn't ask people for things. That would be an obstacle. So I called my father and I was like, will you contribute $5,000 and sponsor a kid in this youth at risk program? And he said, yes. And I literally couldn't even believe it. because I was afraid to ask him for $5, never mind 5,000. And from that moment on, I said, that's it. I am never going to be afraid to ask for something again. And I've ended up raising over $90 million for charities because I disappeared that constraint.
Wow. And I really wonder how many people, myself included, struggle with that every day and may not even be aware of the fact that that's holding them back, not just in their personal life, but also in business and their relationships, because they
Oh my
didn't make that
gosh. Yeah.
connection.
Totally. And it's like you come home and your back hurts and you think people should know what to do. You think your husband or your wife should know that you want a back rub, but you don't want to ask for it. You're just like, oh, my back hurt. And then when they don't offer, you get annoyed. It's ridiculous. It's like literally just rub my back. Please rub my back. I mean, I get what I want in my marriage because I ask for it,
Yeah, that's
not a
good
mystery.
communication.
Yeah, it's very important. And most people have a blind spot around that. Even people who are very good in certain circumstances making requests, like maybe at work, it's a little different. Maybe they have a situation where they're a manager, so it's not really making a request, it's delegating and giving orders. That's different than making a request that could be declined. People have all sorts of craziness around that messes with them. That's a big thing that messes with people, like being rejected or not included or thinking someone doesn't like you because they said no, or all that whole thing. There's a world of messable with material there.
Wow. That is so fascinating. And what has been your own personal biggest transformation that you've gone through in this whole journey?
Well, seeing that whole conversation about you can't do your art as your career that I had been right about for almost 20 years, because that got created when I was about 5 years old. And I asked my father, who was a painter, he had stopped painting, and I was five, and we were in our car. And I said to him, how come you stopped painting? And he said, well, you can't do your art as your career. And it wasn't really that he said it, because he said a lot of things to me in my life that I didn't listen to, but I said it to myself in that moment,
Mhm.
that you can't do your art as your career. And that became like a prison, and I didn't see it. It was a blind spot for me my whole life. I had evidence. I had a lot of friends that were actors and singers, and I was like, I don't want to be a starving artist. Look at them. They're all waiters. And I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. I wanted to make money. I wanted to be successful, blah, blah, blah. And I did that. I was a producer at a very young age running a company. But then I realized that maybe that wasn't the truth. Maybe that was something I said to myself in the infinite wisdom of five, and just stuck myself in that prison.
Mhm.
And when that loosened, everything opened up for me. Like, not just about being a singer, it was like, what else am I being limited by? What else am I saying isn't possible? What am I not even looking at or wanting because I think it's not doable? And it just opened up this world of what could be possible. And that was, I think, the turning point moment where I said, I have to do this with people. I have to give this to people because, it's great that I had my dreams come true, but so what? Now what? Now everybody should have their dreams come true. So I started my entertainment company way back then, like, I don't know, 25 years ago, to make people's dreams come true in the entertainment business. And then I started leading transformative programs. I was like, let me do this not just in entertainment, but with everybody. So I've had so many moments of seeing a blind spot, though, and being able to make it malleable, including with my late father in law, who everybody thought he was this very tough guy, and I was kind of afraid of him. I tried to get along with him, but it was like nothing worked at all with this guy. I mean, I was just like, he's just difficult. And then I realized, I was like, that's my conversation, that he's difficult. So I've got this lens. And even though people agree and I'm right, it's not working. And I was again in a transformative program, and I saw for myself how much I love my life and how much my husband is really the source of my great life. And then all of a sudden, this was a big transformation for me. All of a sudden, I realized that Tommy was his father. And if Michael's the source of my great life and Tommy's his father, you could say that Tommy's the source of my great life.
Mhm.
And everything altered in that moment. And I went to call him because I realized I had been a nasty, stingy, judgmental daughter in law for like a decade. I was in a cold war with this guy. And here I am, peace on the planet, except with my father in law, who should rot and die in hell. I mean, it was so inauthentic. So I called him, and he was like, what's the matter? I mean, this is how he talked, right? He was like, what is it? And I was like, well, and I was so scared because, again, your brain is designed to survive. And what's surviving is that story. that he's evil and that he's scary. So that's what's got more muscle than being a generous, loving, appreciative daughter in law, which I had just created like 5 minutes earlier. For 10 years, I had the scary father in law. So, it's like a muscle, it's like an atrophied muscle that with your word, I create being a loving and appreciative daughter in law. So it has very little reality to it. So it takes discipline for me to be that when my reaction is to be afraid. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when I got on the phone with him, it took a lot of courage and a lot of discipline to just say, I'm sorry for being a nasty, stingy, judgmental daughter in law for this last 10 years. And I want you to know it ends now. And what you can count on is me being a loving and appreciative daughter in law no matter what. And this has cost you your connection to your grandchildren, to your family, and it's over. And from that moment on, we were like friends, IMing each other. Everything that he used to do that seemed so mean to me, all of a sudden was through a new lens. He seemed adorable. He would go blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, oh, you're so cute. Like it just literally was no longer the same person because I shifted my lens, not because he changed.
Yeah.
That was a big transformation.
Such an important view on perspectives, right? Like how we view things in our lives and around us, and how that can affect everything to do with us and to do with our relationships. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I find that fascinating.
Absolutely. Thanks for giving me the chance. I always love sharing about my father in law. He passed about 6 years ago in a plane crash. And when we got the call, after we had at least 8 years of great relationship after the 10 years of not great relationship, right? And when that happened, while we were totally devastated, obviously, when you find out somebody dies, so surprisingly, especially,
Yeah.
but in the very next moment, it was clean. It was like he knew how much we loved him. We knew how much he loved us. It was clean. And that took 3 seconds of courage on a phone call to have that kind of relationship. And it could have very easily gone a different way. And, it does. It takes courage to take on developing yourself as someone who is going to be more committed to being happy than being right. It's easy to be right.
Yeah.
Turn on the news, right?
Yeah. And also developing, as you kind of wove that in there, the personal accountability for creating what you want. It's easier to say, oh, it's life. I can't do that. It's much harder to say, well, I have a part in that. I can change some of that and take that accountability. That is tough.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy, but it's simple.
Mhm.
And it takes muscle. It's kind of like lifting a 150-pound weight is not complicated, but it's not easy unless you have the muscle. So it's all about developing the muscle, again, of word, not to beat a dead horse, but I feel like that is the key. And that's saved my life more than one time, having strength with my word.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how you work with people and some of your programs and services that you offer, because I'm very curious to find out how you make people's dreams come true. How can listeners work with you if they feel inspired by what we've been talking about?
Well, we have all sorts of offers, and I have a free offer, which is a 5-day promise game. And again, promising is your word, right? So you might promise to make 5 people smile today. So it's all about creating some space of possibility in your life, and it's a 5-day challenge. That's like the base level of working with me. And then I have all sorts of programs. I have a calendar workshop just got launched on my website, and that's a very easy way to get in the world of what I do. I have a 5-day dream source discovery process, which is all about creating that context. It's very close to the work that I did in my TED talk about people getting why they have the dreams they have and getting to be able to fulfill that on a daily basis without having the circumstances. So, somebody wants to get an Academy Award. Okay, but why? Then what? Like, what is it really that you want? And getting to the source of your dreams. That's a very powerful process, actually. I also have a course that's launching on March 16th called Creating the Foundation for Being Unmessable With. And that's a 5-week live on Zoom with lots of video modules and PDF workbooks. And so that's a great way for people to get a sense of this work and begin developing that muscle as well. And then I have group coaching and one-on-one coaching for the higher levels.
Amazing. That sounds wonderful. And we will be linking to all of Jocelyn's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there for all of the links and how you can connect with her directly if you'd like to explore working with her or taking one of her upcoming courses.
Or even my newsletter, which is obviously free and comes out every week and has tips for being unmessable with too.
Perfect. We'll add that to the show notes as well. And we'll have everything put together so people can find you and connect with you.
Wonderful. I'd love that.
And this has been another incredible episode. And I really hope our listeners have enjoyed the journey into the art of being unmessable with as much as I have. It has been such a pleasure chatting with you on the podcast today, Josselyne. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to be with you.
Yeah, amazing. And thank you for all this wonderful work that you do and the transformations that you're a part of. I really love that. So thank you for that and take care.
You too.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please subscribe, share on social media, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and the Journey blog. Sending you love and courage, and see you next week.